everybody. I'm going to name that. Yeah. We're here to talk about the U.S. collaboration of zones. And first, I just want to look at the way that things have gone today in this room and how this is kind of a natural culmination of what's happened. We started off the workshops here in this room this morning with what is a zone and how do zones work and what do they do. And the general consensus was that they're all so different, it's hard to say. Then we moved into a discussion about taking the eastern U.S. zones and reimagining what that looks like. One of the things that came out of that was that that does not make sense unless we're looking at eventually one United States zone. What we're here talking about now is the fact that there has already been some discussion in a similar nature about the collaboration of U.S. zones. Our first presenter on that is going to give us a little bit of the history and how we got to this discussion. Everybody welcome Jeff.
Yeah.
We're going to get some water.
We're going to make my chef on that.
Jeff.
Hey, Louis, don't get excited. All right, so the collaboration of U.S. zones was actually created out of, we had a work group at WC level for all the zones. Collaborated to get together. WC set this up. Just wanted to get a discussion going as far as what's going on, so that zones could discuss what's going on in their zones with other zones around the world. At the same time, we're having discussions in the southeastern zone about collaborating along the East Coast. Really went to on the PR. Okay, in all forms, public relations, up in, between, it was the southeastern zone and the northeastern zone. Wasn't there autonomy? Was there autonomy in that?
Autonomy kind of
unofficially
tied into it.
It was really the southeastern and northeastern doing collaboration on that. We had the collaboration between the southern zone and the southeastern zone to do the CAT workshop now 3 years ago. In Dallas. So we started collaborating around that. And so the southeastern zone, while all this is going on, so I was representing our zone at the meeting of all the zones, and they said, hey, could you please bring up there about having a meeting just of US zones to see if we could collaborate here amongst the US. And the World Board heard us, okay, and said, yeah, we'll ask and see if the other US zones want to do that. And so out of this big collaboration amongst all the zones, we started out the US collaboration. So that's where it started. It came from a participant at our zonal service said, hey, why don't we go ahead and do it? The zone voted on it, said we'll go ahead and do it. We then talked to other zones. They said, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. And we all of a sudden started to do it. And one collaborative effort led to another collaborative effort that led to another collaborative effort. And you find out now there is a whole shitload of collaboration going on between really all the zones in the United States for the first time. Okay? And it's now just in the starting stages. Okay? We've all been a part of starting something, and it's usually painful at first, a lot of bullshit at first, a lot of arguing at first, but eventually we get together. If it's a good idea, it moves forward on its own merit. And so that's where we're at this point, seeing where is this thing going to go. But we have seen concrete results, okay? And those results are all the collaborative efforts that are currently going on in the United States. All right, so that's where it all came from. Thank you.
Thanks. Our next presenter, I actually do not see in the room, so we're going to come back to Sherry later, and we're going to go ahead and move on to Louis.
Okay, I'm Louis. I'm an addict. One thing that our next presenter was going to mention to you was that early in the process, we did do a little strategic planning exercise before I actually joined the process, And one of the action items of that strategic plan, which was finished about 16, 18 months ago, was to come up with a vision and purpose statement. And I think Sherry is. Oh. Okay. Okay.
Swipe right.
Technology.
You're familiar with that,
Missing
right?
technology.
So anyway, I sort of became part of this in my involvement with the Midwest Zona Forum, and I was asked to actually put together the work group to do the vision and purpose of the collaboration with zones. And so for those of you who don't know, I sort of, when people pay me, which is not very often, I do this professionally. And so my intention all along was to create a vision and purpose document that actually provided some substance to the concept of zonal collaboration. I mean, it's very easy to see vision and purpose statements in NA that have all the boilerplate, great sounding stuff. We're going to promote unity. We're going to carry them out. I mean, we're going to do things that every service body theoretically does, but I intended to help design something that actually, when people want to know what exactly does the collaboration intend to do, that we will give them some specifics. And so it started with a work group that met several times from December of last year to 2020 to April of last year. And the first part of it was we started with the premise of, what do the zones already do well? I mean, by this time, there had already been some really useful zonal services being provided. And so we started to sort of get an inventory of, tell me the sorts of things that your zone already does well that we could use to collaborate with other zones. And once we did that, once we assembled those together, we sort of had a visioning exercise, well, what does a successful collaboration look like? What, in 5 years, we've got a successful collaboration. What does that look like? And so then we did that. And one thing that came out of that were 4 areas of potential collaboration. And those 4 areas were communications, public relations, technology, and fellowship development and outreach. Those were the 4 key areas. And so the first thing that we did after that was we actually designed the vision statement. And that statement crafted just general statements, describing what the sort of thing a collaboration can do. And to those 4 main themes, we added an identification statement to let people know what exactly are we, and then also an accountability statement. I mean, we're talking about doing this, so who are we accountable to? And then the 4th part was to define the purpose. So it's one issue to give a series of topics that we could collaborate on. It's another issue to say, well, what does that look like? What are we talking about? And so what we really intend to do is, with this process, we would fill service gaps. One zone does something, another zone say, hey, I could really help that in my part of the country. What gaps are filled? And so how are we going to do that? And in coordination with the zone forums, we respond to requests for assistance. So, people need help in their local community, and they reach out first to their zonal forum region and then ask us. And we also apply a lot of virtual tools. One of the silver linings in this terrible pandemic is that, we've applied virtual tools to any service, and what a difference that makes. We ain't going back. Because we've accomplished a lot already. And then use untapped resources, and there's a lot of them. Former trusted servants, members with talented skill sets they use in their work that they want to apply in service. Members with knowledge of technology and how to apply it to any service needs. In some way or another, these untapped resources have come out already. The YAP, the BMLT, those were members who had some skills in these areas who just, they weren't directed by a region, they just did it themselves. And so it was very come up. And so what did this vision statement say? I'm going to read through it. These next slides are the actual statement itself. So our first identification paragraph, I call it, is that through the collaborative efforts of the U.S. zones of NA, we are inspired in unity to coordinate services of which this collective is uniquely qualified. This collaboration seeks to provide a source of experience and inspiration to share with any communities as requested by the zones. This assistance will help communities grow critical services to fulfill our primary purpose that no addict seeking recovery from addiction need ever die. I couldn't escape from the boilerplate. So we got that here. And so, what will we strive to do? Raise awareness of the zones in the U.S. as a positive, reliable, and valuable asset in achieving our primary purpose. No one in my region knows what the Midwest Zonal Forum even is, right? People don't even know we're there. Another thing is we want to provide a national resource that brings consistency and accessibility to communications within the fellowship. So that, you need some information about NA, well, we can provide that for you. Provide internal services and training to U.S. zones and local communities in public relations, fellowship development, technology, and communications. We're going to be strategic, which is say, of course we're going to be strategic, but we're only going to plan to do something that someone asks us to do, right? Someone needs help in this area, we will provide that help. And we'll also energize and stimulate the growth of NA in the United States by enhancing cooperation, coordination, and information sharing. One thing that this current service thing that we've been able to do virtually, it has brought a lot of resources back into service that weren't there. And as a programming chair of the various events I've done, that's been one of my objectives, was to bring in people that we haven't been able to see. So this was part of the vision statement. Then the third part of the vision statement is accountability. A collaboration of U.S. zones will be directly accountable to the zones of the U.S. It will include the U.S. zones in its discussions and projects with both regular reporting and active listening, very important. It's very easy, as Jeff pointed out, for service body people to lose sight of what do our members really want, right? And so we're going to practice listening. It will strive to be responsive to requests for help from any service body and closely coordinate and collaborate with the U.S. zones. We will always remember who we serve and why. So turning out to the purpose, on all those key areas, we actually specified a specific purpose. So collaboration of the U.S. zones will strive to improve awareness of our zones as assets for our local service bodies. You may have seen something similar in the vision statement. This is what we're going to do to address that issue in the vision statement. Identification and utilization of untapped resources in our zones will come as we share knowledge and our service experience. So the next purpose is the communication statement. A collaboration of U.S. zones will strive to act as a national communications hub to enable simple and accessible communications within NA and with the public. This will enable addicts and the public to connect to the recovery service and information source in their local community. Whenever people reach out to NA in the U.S., this collaboration will strive to connect them to the addict service body or NA information source. We won't necessarily have the information, but we'll know who you can turn to in your community. And that's what we're hoping we can accomplish with this. Next purpose is the technology statement. A collaboration of U.S. zones will strive to improve our service efforts through technology. The goal is to enable NA members to work together to leverage technology in creating systems and processes to enhance our ability to reach the addict that still suffers. A lot of that's already happening now. But if we coordinate across the country, we might find more opportunities. Then let's see, there's a technology statement. PR statement. So collaboration of U.S. zones will strive to improve our PR efforts by galvanizing the unity of NA's message within the U.S. By supporting efforts to nationally interface with the public, we can have a national presence that will validate NA as a resource, right? And then a national PR effort will strive to address the issues that only a U.S. body can accomplish, provide a centralized point of contact. I mean, believe it or not, we don't have that in our fellowship. We don't even have that in Illinois, much less the rest of the country. For example, a website, phone line to enable the public to better seek us out. So we're trying to show specific things we'd like to do. Assist our fellowship in providing national PSAs. That's also happening. Anyway, communicate and coordinate information and attendance at national conferences. So there are a lot of opportunities for NA to provide a booth at various places. Right now, my region does that, but we as a zonal collaborative can marshal resources to do that more regularly. So fellowship development and outreach, purpose statement of that. So a collaboration U.S. zones will strive to improve our fellowship development outreach efforts by growing NA's presence in isolated communities. So there are a lot of parts of the Midwest where there is no NA. And that one thing we would like to do as a collaborative is to, identify those empty spaces, reach out to the local fellowship and say, hey, would you like help with that? We will strive to offer project-based services and mentorship. We're not going to form a bunch of committees to find something to do. Hopefully people will come to us with something they want to do. We will strive to map where NA is not so. We can identify where NA services are most needed across the US. All fellowship development outreach activities will be in collaboration with the local zone. We won't do anything unless your local community wants us there. So in the accounting statement, which is identical to the other accounting statement I say, but I'll say it again because it sounds so good. A collaboration of U.S. zones will be directly accountable to the zones of the U.S. It will include the U.S. zones in its discussions and projects with both regular reporting and active listening. It will strive to be responsive to requests for help from any service body and closely coordinate and collaborate with the zones. We will always remember who we serve and why. So, this came out April, I think, of last year, maybe May, something like that. You know me, and I'm so dense and dates. And right away, several zones supported it right away. Several zones did. A couple of zones expressed a desire to slow the process down, and I'm sure the local fellowship is on board. And these are two zones that were already doing a lot of stuff. One recurring theme was the concept of, gee, what on earth is a zone, right? And so that was something that came up. And some were concerned that this effort adds a new layer of service. And as much as we want to avoid the concept, in fact, it sort of is a new layer of service on some levels. And so the outcome is that the collaboration adopted vision purpose in October. So, it went out to zonal forums. My region voted for it. I don't know if my region do. My region benefits from the fact that until recently we met monthly, so that something comes up, we can act on it right away. But we did actually send it back to the areas, and they came back. So my region supported it, and that is it for me.
Next up, I believe, with moving forward, where do we go from here? We have Craig.
You need a PowerPoint to do that.
I'm your manual clicker.
Oh, okay.
Simmer
down.
See?
There you go.
You're already presumed, now they have something.
I can give you a laser pointer on that.
Is there a laser pointer?
Yep.
Oh, there is? What's a laser pointer?
It doesn't do anything on that. Go ahead.
So I'm an acting prayer. And, one of the, okay, so, anyway, Jeff gave some background information on where this came from and how this started and that kind of thing. One of the decisions that was made at one of our earliest meetings was we did a survey, and we sent a survey out to regions and members about what we were thinking about and where some of their needs would be. And so we needed to ask people, and we did that in the form of a survey. That's just the tool we used at that time. And so the survey came back, and we looked at some of the responses back. Predictably, some of the responses was about communications, or should I say ineffective communications, and some of the things that people like to see: website, a national website, national PSA, maybe a national helpline. Some of those things came back. We lumped all that together under communications or public relations or something around that effect. But one of the other things that came back that just kind of in our discussions was, before we moved forward, we're just trying to just jump out, because there was discussion about let's just do a couple of things, which is valid, which helps establish credibility. Let's just do something which members see as some value and added value, then that would establish, hey, this is probably a good damn idea. There's some credibility established. But then there was another school of thought that before we did some of that stuff, we need to plan and be more strategic and develop some type of game plan, use all the things that we've learned around planning, and use those techniques in this as well. And the whole, I'm not going to give you a planning one-on-one kind of discussion, but the whole thing around planning is that, especially when it comes to public relations, and I'm just of the perspective that just about everything we do is public relations, whether it's internal or external. It's all relationship based, internal and external. Well, part of that is being intentional, being thoughtful, being strategy or strategic throw us off. All of us are strategic in some ways in our planning, whether it's at home or whether it's at work or whether it's in recovery. And what that means is, what's the most important thing I need to get done? For instance, when I'm running short of cash, I don't know about you, but I need to look at what is it that I really need to pay? What can wait until next month? What can wait until 2 months from now? What is it that I really don't have to pay? What is it my daughters need to pay? I mean, those kind of decisions. Just looking at it in that kind of way of prioritizing what's the most important thing. Strategic planning is essentially that. What's the most important thing that will get us closer to our vision? What's the thing that's going to have the most impact to our members and strengthening our groups and creating that atmosphere of recovery where people come to our meetings? They not only come, they stay. And creating that strengthening home group. So we use the same type of thinking here. We decided to, well, let's create a strategic plan. Let's think about it. Let's talk about it. And so they asked me to lead a task team to bring people together and facilitate that discussion and come back with stuff. What you're seeing here is what you're about to see. This is version 7. And the key word in that is draft. This is nothing written in stone. This is nothing that says you're going to do this, we're going to do this. This is a draft. This is that's part of the vision that we've been talking about, moving forward on and collaborating together. We started meeting, and there are a number of people in this room who were in those first couple of meetings and helping. We did a brainstorm, which is what planning is about, gathering information. The survey was part of gathering information. If you're familiar with planning and planning basics, one of the first things is gathering information. The survey was part of that. And so we came together to look at the results of the survey and do just a brain dump and gather everybody together. And let's hear some thoughts around some of these things. This is where this version 7 comes from. It's a direct outcome of those meetings that we've been meeting since 2020. I mean, I lose track of time now with other than my clean time. I lose track of time. So, I mean, what was that? August 2019 or yeah, something like that. So we've been doing these kind of things for over 18 months now. And so we started meeting. This was, when you see the purpose and function here, as I said earlier, form follows function. This was before we did that task team that Lewis headed up did purpose and vision. So this is, you're gonna see some overlay and some bleed over, but that was because we hadn't done that yet. And so this was the framework. So the purpose, and one of the things that Jeff was speaking about earlier so passionately about in the United States Well, part of that discussion is, the data over the past, I don't know how, it's been several years now, probably more than several. The data shows where NA is not growing in the United States. And maybe some people are okay with that, or maybe I'm of the belief that there's uncharted territory and there's opportunity that we're not taking advantage of, and we haven't reached that plateau yet. There are underserved areas in our communities that it's wrong. Maybe it's wrong for me to say that, but I don't believe that everyone in the United States knows about NA. I'm not of that belief, and I believe there's opportunity for us, and that we need to kind of regalvanize and also like recapture that pioneering spirit that some of us were talking about earlier today, about that pioneering spirit when some of us were new and we were like soldiers in Narcotics Anonymous, man, foot soldiers, and did those kind of things. There's opportunity in the United States. And so we want to contribute to that growth through information sharing. That's just a function statement that we had there. We went through a series of like looking at, again, prioritization and looking at what the issues were. Thank you, Dennis. Looking at what the issues were. What are we hearing? What do we think? What did the survey tell us? Putting our best ideas and our best experience together and looking at what is it that we can do again that would mostly impact the continuation and growth of Narcotics Anonymous in the United States. What is the thing that we need to do first? And how does that affect the other things? And one thing follows another. So the priority that we came up with was there's probably a couple of phases here, a phase one and a phase two as part of strategic planning. What is it that we need to do in phase one? Part of planning is a lot of times you do one thing happens here, which leads to another thing. And the second thing builds on what was done first and those kind of things. We can't boil the ocean. It's just, we can't boil the ocean, man. We can't do everything at the same time. We can, but how well, we're not gonna do them well. We need to do the most important thing first. So we have a phase one and a phase two. Phase one was about increase the goal. Here's the goal. This is part of planning. Increase, I'm not gonna read all this because you guys can see it for yourself, right? And I don't need to read all that. But it is about increasing that public awareness. That's part of that public relations, man. Everything is public relations. We don't call it that, but just in my experience. But how do we do that? And so here, this is the goal, that public awareness, getting information sharing throughout all of the regions in the United States. What is a way that we can do that? What's the approach? So the first thing we thought about was a US website. That would be a common website throughout the entire United States. And it's part of that US collaboration that we're talking about, that we've been talking about all weekend, and using the best of our ideas, leveraging our resources, maximizing our resources. And here's the path to do that. This is the approach. And here are the ways to get to that destination. And all of those things under that, A, B, C, D, some of those things are assist with updating national BMLT, basic meeting locator, and making sure that as many people that want to be on that are included in that. And here's why. It makes it easier for people to find us. That's what this is about. This is not about finding this NA meeting of US collaboration. What this is about is finding that NA recovery meeting in your community and helping people find that, and helping someone in Missouri that's visiting North Carolina to find that meeting in North Carolina, and making it easier for them to do that. This is a public facing kind of thing. Minimum financial impact means that, and you guys, I think, familiar with some of these terminologies because it's in the conference agenda report. I mean, we've been here, it's just common terms that our members are familiar with. Not so much that they understand it, but, and I don't, because, and I'm saying that, and I'm not saying that in a dismissive way, but what I believe is when we talk about being on the same page, that doesn't mean that we all have a common understanding or even a common support or opinion of it. What that means is that we all have the same information. That's what that means to me. And so the financial impact would be minimum because this is something that could get done. One of the regions, Northern New York, has already volunteered to put up a demo. And that demo wouldn't be that anyone could get to it. It's a demo where we would have people familiar with UAT and having a sandbox, which means that you put up some testing site where people can go look at it. When we rebranded the website in the Free State region, I was a PR chair. We convinced the RDs that it's best that our website be up under the auspices of PR. And part of that was rebranding our website. And so what we did was over a course of 3 or 4 months, we built out a test website. And we brought it to the RCMs at the RSC meeting, and they went to it and we showed it. We demoed it in the RSC meeting. And they went and looked, we gave them access and they went and looked at it so that they could see for themselves what this looks like. And the improvement on the current version. And when they did that, they approved it. They approved us, and what that meant was we turned it on from testing to production, and people had access to it. So this will be minimum impact. The item D was some of the things that we talked about today, and the benefits of having one zone in the eastern part of the United States. We have that central portal and that central point where people can go to. Then I'm gonna let you scroll, please. She always telling me. All right, so.
Oh.
So, so each one of these things, when we went through them, we actually defined what, why, who. And to bring those recommendations back to the bigger body, the U.S. collaboration. And so we talked about a web team, task team. Give some people, get a small group of people, give them the task, let them go off and do it, man. We got plenty of resources in our fellowship. Let them go off and do it. And then bring the recommendation, give them the requirements. Just give people the requirements and what's needed, and then delegate them that task. So we could have a U.S. collaboration task team that could do these things for us, demo it, bring it back for people to look at, help establish some credibility, show people what it could look like. The next one the goal was improve access to workshops and training material. This goes back to what I said is one of the challenges or problems in NA service is the inconsistency that we have in our service environment, which means that one area over here is doing just fine, rocking, rolling, blah, blah, blah. There's an area, neighboring area right beside them that's not doing so well. It's that inconsistency that we have. I'm not saying that, because I'm not a believer in that one size fits all, because there are different resources, there are different factors and those kind of things. I think that's, me personally, is part of our problem in a service now, is everything needs to look the same. I'm not a believer in that. I'm a believer in that things need to be developed based on the needs of the community and based on the resources in that community. But one of the things that we want to try to help with is that inconsistency and improve access for our members to those resource materials. We talk to people all the time about NA virtual, the Google Drive, the virtual, all those videos, all that stuff that we've done. And I mentioned that to some people in my area and they were like, what? Where's that at? Kind of thing. And so it's an ongoing thing, man, to continuously improve and make that information not only available, but accessible for people and show them where that information is at. Again, who would do that? You'd have a U.S. collaboration training task team. Same thing. Give some people the requirements, let them go off and do those kind of things, and then come back to the bigger body. These are things that we believe that have major impact, less financial impact, and takes less resources to do, but they have major impact on what we're talking about, and they have major impact on our fellowship and major impact on carrying the message and making things more accessible for people. You want to keep going, Dennis, please? Yeah, mentorship is a big part of that because, when we bring people along with us, I think everybody in here at some point or another can relate to somebody that helped them, that helped share information and experience with them. I know I can. I've had many mentors, and not just my sponsor, but other people who've helped me out. I've learned from collaborating with Matt and Lee and Dennis and others. I've known Lewis for many years, but I'm saying I've learned things from people, and that's a form of mentorship. And so we believe that could be part of this as well. Here's another goal: foster a common understanding of the purpose of fellowship development. I heard Sherry stand up today a little while ago and say, when she first heard that fellowship development, I think I heard it right, well, she wasn't sure what that was. And so if you guys remember when we kind of, we didn't transition, but public relations became more of more familiar term, not just public relationship with a small p and a small r, but a big P and a big R, formal public relations. And people were like, well, what is that? What the hell? Blah, 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 blah. And it helped for me. I believe it helps when we're sharing with our members, including me and anyone else, is to break things, I don't want to say break things down, but to help describe them in a way that our members understand. We've been doing public relations for since the beginning of Narcotics Anonymous, and even before. We just didn't call it public relations. We've been doing fellowship development for many, many years. I'm going to say everyone in here's recovery is a product of public relations and fellowship development. Because if I got clean in 1987 in Raleigh, the area was 3 years old when I got clean. If those people that were here before me hadn't taken the time to try to do things in a PR perspective, I found NA through what other people were doing. And so what we're saying is we want to foster that common understanding and make sure everyone has the same level of information and what fellowship development means. Fellowship development means many things: sponsorship, mentorship. Here's one of my favorites: to try to increase the level of participation in the conference agenda report. How many people know that in our big fellowship, we have less than 40% participation from registered groups in the car, which is supposed to be the tool that our groups direct services with? So how can people exercise the second concept when they're not participating? That's a part of fellowship development. Here's another one. There are communities, those underserved communities in your area, right? How can we work to start NA meetings and those kind of things? That's what fellowship development is about. It takes the same matrix here: who's gonna do it, when, all of those kind, and what's gonna get done to meet that goal. Here is these things take a lower priority, Because again, we can't do everything all at one time, and we can't boil the ocean. And so prioritization is a part of planning. Here's some things that are no less important, but maybe take a lower priority than some of the other goals and approaches to reach something. And this is, again, I'm not gonna read it all, but PR in the US lacking inconsistency or lacking consistency. There's the goal, that's the approach, a national phone line. And here's again an example of that particular item would be, that's a potential heavy financial impact. And so you start weighing out the urgency versus the priority and the impact. And when you do that, you come up with what is the thing that we need to do first. That's the way to do that. And so here's some of those things: a national phone line, national PSAs, a video, a PR presentation, a system for identifying. The word grading, don't get too hung up on that, but because we're not in competition with each other, and we're not saying anyone's less than or greater than, but what we're saying is we want to help each other. And part of I hear from professionals all the time, one of the guys said it yesterday, is sometimes NA can be unreliable. And part of being unreliable is, okay, Joel's area does just fine. They show up with their commitments all the time, blah, blah, blah. Then you go over to Matt's area and, you know, they half-ass show up, blah, blah, blah. But here's what happens. When the professionals look at it, they don't know Matt or Joel, and they don't care. Here's who they know. They know Narcotics Anonymous. So they paint all of us with the same brush. And so we want to do some things to, let's find out where we need help at and where we can help each other. I think I'm coming right down here. And the same thing goes, there's the issue, these are, I don't know how to see that. Anyway, these are some of those issues. So here's where we are right now. At our last meeting of the collaboration of US zones, we made a decision. The work group came back with the final recommendation to the body, which is the recommendation is that we should circle back and find a way to ask our regions about, number one, just more information about what we're doing, more information about the vision and purpose. Just make sure that people have the same information and not assume that, look, we've been talking about this for 2 years. I guarantee you there's someone in this room that this is their first time ever hearing about this. That's not unusual. So we don't want to repeat some of those mistakes. We want to try to do a little better with communications. Let's make sure that people have all the information before we just kind of just move forward. Let's just, no harm in double checking. You know, I come from the Abraham Lincoln school of thought that you measure twice and cut once, right? That's not like brain science. That's just measuring twice, cutting once. Let's just make sure we have nothing to lose, more to gain. Because not only do we want people to have the information, we want our members to use the services that could be provided. And then, the second thing is that we've developed another survey that actually asks some of those questions about, what was that question? How do you, well, we just did it the other night. I don't have it written. It's, does your region support collaboration
of US zone reform?
There we go. Does your region support that? So we've got like 4 or 5 questions in the survey that take that vein. That's the kind of questions that we're asking, because we don't want to ask these fuzzy, murky type questions, because what we'll get back would be murky. And so we want to ask definite questions and get definite responses back.
To the regions. not
And
to-
this goes to that survey. We haven't presented it yet. We just met the other night, but that survey would go to the regional delegate. The delegates would then determine how they want to gather that information and then bring it back. But it would then give us more information and would give us an idea of what some of our next steps. We wouldn't just give the survey to the delegate. We're going to have a narrative, more than a cover letter. We're going to have a narrative. Remember the conference agenda report? That there's a narrative about the budget and it gives that background, that's exactly what that's going to do. We're also going to have some audio videos that go along with the narrative. We want to give people as much information as possible. Some of us are more visual than others. So we're creating a little video with audio with it that helps support the narrative. So that and people can read that, listen to the audio. We'll probably have Matt's voice on it and, blah, 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 blah. And give that to the delegates. And then the delegates can decide how they want to disseminate that information, how they want to gather it back. It's not our role to tell the delegates what to do. It's our role to create the information and then provide it to the people that we serve and then let them do that thing. So that's where we go from now, is that information is going to come back in April at our next U.S. Collaboration of Zones meeting for a decision. And when that decision is made, then you guys as delegates will get that information. So that's where we are. Sorry to be so long-winded.
How you doing? All right, now I know this is a discussion that's been going on for a couple of years. I know a lot of you guys have been hearing it, and like he said, some of you may have not. This isn't the first time something like this has been done. It hasn't always been rolled out right in the United States, at least hopefully until now, but we're not the first people to try a national service body. So we wanted to try and let you hear about an existing national service body that is working and is effective. So we've asked Roxana from CANA to come in and talk about that for a little bit.
Thank you again very much. My name's Roxanne. I'm a recovering addict. Again, thank you for everybody's service and part in this symposium. It takes a village to put something like this together and to keep it going for so many days. So thank you so much for your service. So I am, for those of you that weren't here earlier when I spoke, I am the newly elected chair, October 2021 for the CANA ACNA body, and that stands for Canadian Assembly of Narcotics Anonymous. And the ACNA is the French acronym for that. And I cannot say it in French, so I will not try. Anyways, what we do as a national service body is we're a project-driven body. So we do strategic planning. As you see, you were just shown the draft version of your strategic plan. So we have gone through that for several years, and actually it was people from the World Service Office that came and helped us with our strategic planning. We didn't just jump into it and know what we were doing. Steve R. In particular has helped the CANA body several times with the how-to for strategic planning. And one year he didn't show up, so we actually had to do it on our own. So we've just taken it from there and tried to grow with it and learn by it. It is interaction with the members on the floor once a year at our face-to-face meeting. So I thought I would just quickly show you our strategic plan. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's hard to tell when you're not seeing everything on the screen. So I can enlarge this a bit if you'd like. So our strategic plan, we will come up with goals. We actually have 4 goals, and then our approaches and our actions. How are we going to get to achieve that goal? And those goals are written in. So one, we're going to improve external recognition and develop relationships inside and outside of the fellowship. What are we doing to get there? We're going to have PSAs in French. We have PSAs in English. Another approach is we're going to approach professionals and do national professional development. We're going to follow up with those contacts when we are at those events. And so to keep the lines of communication open. Goal number 2, we identify, coordinate, and assess resources, human and financial. How are we going to get there? We're going to continue the improvement of our routine services, which I'll quickly go over in a minute. Goal number 3, build relationships with member communities and foster unity. We're going to develop resources like what is CANA-ACNA workshop. We're going to offer attendance at regional events upon request. We are not going out and asking regions. I heard this mentioned earlier in somebody's share. You know, we serve the regions, the regions serve the areas serve the groups. So we are not going to go out and start telling people what we're going to do. We are through the lines of communication, through our regional delegates, because that's who we collaborate with. We collaborate with our regions. It's really great to see you all collaborating with each other, and it's amazing to be invited to an event like this. I have talked to our body about, you know, what about collaboration with other regions? And first and foremost, they've said, well, you know, what about collaboration between our regions? Because I'm not sure if you experienced this, but during my time in Narcotics Anonymous and in service, there is always somewhere the communication gets dropped and somewhere the information doesn't quite make it. So they want to focus, at this point, they want to focus more so on collaboration between our regions. We have 5 regions. Sorry, wait a minute. Goal number 3, we're going to, like I said, what is CANA-ACNA workshop? They're working on that. We have a pamphlet. What is CANA-ACNA pamphlet? We have a newsletter, those types of things. Goal number 4, build, develop, and support NA in remote communities. We heard somebody sharing about that as well for in the States. So we have a lot of remote communities in Northern Canada where there is no NA presence, but there's a lot of problems with addiction. So we have PR initiatives to those remote communities. We have translations in Inuktitut, James Bay Cree, Blackfoot. We're always working on translations. And again, we have opening lines of communication with Northern Canadian treatment centers. If they haven't heard of NA, just trying to introduce Narcotics Anonymous to them. Our routine services, which were, again, came out of our strategic planning. We send the scan out to the national body, and we actually have the regions workshop the scanning questionnaires. We come up with different questions every year, and we have learned through trial and error that sometimes less is more. You know, we've asked too many questions, we've got too much feedback. There isn't enough human and financial resources sometimes to do all the things that we're asked to do by the fellowship at large. So we've learned to dial it down a little bit, especially last year and this year. We're more focused on specifics, which, you know, a lot of it is really, do you even know that CANA-ACNA exists? Do you know what CANA-ACNA is? Do you know there's a newsletter? Do you know there's a pamphlet? Do you know we have a national website? Because again, the dialogue, sometimes the communication tends to get dropped somewhere. So we're always trying to have the national fellowship recognize that we're there to help carry the message and to provide services on behalf of their regions and that their areas can take advantage of. So our routine services, we have a national phone line. We have a bilingual website. We put on an annual convention, somewhere different in Canada, coast to coast. We have a booth at our Canadian Convention of Narcotics Anonymous, a fellowship development booth, more information. We do local workshops in the areas that we're holding conventions and meetings. We have a CANA-ACNA video, which I didn't want to show because it was too long, but apparently I talked too long anyway, so maybe I should have just showed it. We have PSAs in English that air a couple of times a year, and we're also on the APTN network, which is great. We do our scanning, which I've talked about. We have attendance at professional events, our fellowship development west, we have a fellowship development central and a fellowship development east on our admin body, and they arrange to be present at these professional events. And they work with the regions and the areas, the members, to go and support and to keep the booth with members at the booth, human resources. And so there's collaboration with the areas and the regions. We have a membership email distribution list. If you want to find information get information on CANA, you just sign up on our website. We have a CANA ACNA newsletter. It's only updated every couple of years because not a lot changes on a regular basis, except maybe some of the work groups change when we have our face-to-face meeting. We have a CANA ACNA pamphlet. And so that's what we do as a national body. We provide as many services as we can to the Canadian Fellowship and the regions. And I think that about covers it.
Thank you very much. We had a slight little change in plan. We were going to go into Q&A, but we had enough people ask about it that Dennis is going to show this is unapproved, the demo for the national website. This hasn't been to the body for
It's not
approval,
that
it's just
far.
a demo.
This is one piece.
Just one piece.
So
So you can have an idea of what it is that they're talking about.
So one of the things that was brought up early on in the website discussions, and I think Jeff brought it up at one point, was what would be the difference between this website and the hundreds of other NA websites that are out there? So in that, one of the things that was always envisioned, at least on my end, was a US zonal body should be connecting to local resources, so a website should be able to connect to local resources. So, share screen, let's go. Now we have our fancy acronyms for our service bodies and stuff, like that almost have an area and stuff like that. What if a professional wants to reach out to NA and doesn't know what NA area they're in or what Narcotics Anonymous to look up? So, this is a piece that was created, it's hosted on Northern New York's host, but just a piece that would end up being part of a demo US website. It's not the actual demo. So it's asking for location, allow, let's go down to this map down here. And it's thinking. And there's one glitch on that, it's good. But there's Atlanta. One difference between there was a recent addition into the BMLT Crouton code was the ability, notice it has local area, local region. If their BMLT information included their phone line, it would have that too. But the local phone line, if there is one, isn't listed here, but it pulls out this, so if a professional goes to this, if this was a US website, a professional came here, not having a clue that they're in the whatever area in Atlanta, in the Georgia region, they can go, I want to find Narcotics Anonymous. I know this site over here will get me to somebody near me, next door. And it would be for an addict or for a professional, for whoever, they can find a meeting, they can find the local service body, they can find NA, very simply. So yeah, that was just, I just want to show that, even in like, let's do it, text search. Let's hit my 14513. Web browser. Hey, there's my home. And our New York area, helpline. Northern New York region, helpline. Triple Cities area, helpline. You just find NA, you don't have to know our fancy name for our areas. You just find NA. So that's all I want to check.
Sweet, Dennis.
That's nice. Yeah.
This next section, we're calling Q&A, but to keep with kind of the theme we've had for the day, let's have a discussion. Who would like to open some discussion on this? Go ahead, Jeff.
All right, well, my name's Jeff and I'm an addict.
Hey, Jeff.
And this is actually a question and discussion for Nancy and the New Jersey region and Adam and the Connecticut region. I'm not sure why you guys are holding on so hard to a failed system. Craig had brought up as far as the US growth being flat, but that's not the true story, okay? The growth has died because we went through no growth during a national opioid epidemic. Now, could you please tell me how we could go through a national opioid epidemic and not have any growth in NA in the United States? Okay, I think the conclusion to that is because our system sucks. So I don't know why we're holding on to the northeastern zone being like, we shouldn't combine with anyone, we should keep the way we're doing it, and the southeastern zone should keep the way we're doing it. Why? We're not doing anything to keep. You know what? So could you please explain to me how we could go through what we went through with this opioid epidemic, not grow, and want to hold on to the system? That makes me angry. Okay, I don't know why it doesn't make you guys angry. You know, so I want to know what the solution is to why we can't carry the message more effectively in the United States. And why you think keeping things the way they are is any better than making change. I think the problem is we're resistant to change. That's the real issue. And it's about time we start changing, or else nothing's going to change. And they'll all go to AA, which is what they're doing now. Thank you.
Any follow-up or other questions or discussion? Is there anyone online? Now? We appear to have-
I was going to defer to Nancy if she wanted to answer first.
Okay.
I was gonna defer to Adam because you're so much perceived nicer than me. Anyway, so yeah, I'll give it a shot. Hi guys, I'm an addict named Nancy. And Jeff, I love you. Thank you for your passion. Because that's lacking in NA service. I say that with sincerity. I might disagree with your summation of the position that comes from the New Jersey Regional Service Body. And we too have been bringing up how we need to focus more on getting our message out there into the US when big pharma and therapy has become big business in the United States, and how that's perceived. And so we are 100% on board for that, no question. And I never said we were against merging. In fact, I might have suggested a proposal or so that I will elaborate with my zone on, for ideas on the beginning stages of collaboration. But I perceive my trusted servant position as representation, and I'm here to be a liaison, and part of my role as a liaison is to carry our members along with us. So my comments were based on what I think would be most beneficial and productive and positive in bringing the fellowship, at least where I live, along with us. One of the when we received the presentation from Matt and Wavina, thank you, Matt. I never got a chance to thank you for your presentation to my region on the US collaboration. The excitement over the website proposal was exponentially high. Not a person in the room did not emphatically believe that this is needed in the United States. And I mentioned, I probably would have mentioned that. I don't know if I did when I was given the floor at the last US zonal collaboration meeting, even though I was cut off halfway through and not even heard a thank you for sharing, which doesn't promote unity and active listening, as Louis engaged. And that this body's efforts could probably gain a lot more support as we do it project-based, and present it to the fellowship in such a way that they are a part of it. And they have a say in it. And so, look, we signed on to the BMLT years ago, and thank you for the Southeast Zone, the multi-zonal in Florida to present that idea. And we not only actively engage it, but we are now training area representatives to be functional in the BMLT. We are 100% on board with that. So I think there's a lot more we agree on than we disagree on. Maybe process is something we might see differently. But the ultimate goal, like, we're with you. If that helps at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Sharon.
Thank you, Nancy. My name is Adam. I'm an addict. And that was very well said, Nancy. First of all, I don't speak for the Connecticut region. I'm not even the regional delegate at this current time. I'm an RCM for my area right now. That's it. What I will say, and thank you, Jeff. I agree. Your passion is fantastic, and thank you to Matt and Craig and Lewis and Dennis for your presentations here today. So these are my personal thoughts, obviously, and I know I've shared them before. I don't necessarily have an issue with collaboration at all. And I don't think I'm holding on. I'm holding on a little bit. My issue is one of accountability more than anything, I think. What I shared at the last, I think, Northeast Zonal Forum is, and maybe even at my region, I believe that this type of thing should not be done at the zonal forums. I believe like a collaboration between our zonal forums, number one, should be project-based and should come back to decisions by the regions, not by the zonal forums. That's one of my concerns. I think the base of conscience is too small at the zonal forums. And I believe that it's too far removed from the areas and the regions at that point for there to be not way too many questions about what are these people doing. I think we need that buy-in from our fellowship, and I think getting regional consciences on projects is a better way to do that than things being decided at the zonal forums. And Connecticut specifically, after who was it? Was it Dennis and Wilvina came and presented to our region? I think it was Dennis and Wilvina. I can't remember exactly. We specifically said we are in favor specifically of a national website and specifically with a national phone line in concept. But the overall idea of just the zonal forums going along and deciding what this collaboration should do, we're not in favor of that specifically. Again, and I think it all comes back to the accountability, and the region wants to have a say in it. So, it was Shane, and thank you, Shane. Yeah, it was Shane and Wilvina. So I don't know if I had anything else to add. Nancy really summed up a lot of the similar thoughts very, very well. The last thing I did want to say is, and you're entirely right, Jeff, like the growth of NA is, forget about flat. It's decreased here, especially with the beginning of the pandemic. A lot of people here think it's because of the pandemic. I believe it was shrinking here before the pandemic even started. And I believe part of it is because of, like Nancy had mentioned, the big pharma, and because we have an opioid crisis, and there's so many more recovery resources available to addicts today, and we have a what's the right word? We just don't have enough people on a local level to do the kind of direct service, that the PR service that we need to get the word out. And I'm not sure how a collaboration on a national level would help getting more people locally involved to basically, feet on the pavement type of a thing, which I think is what we need. Thanks.
And, and I might add one concern: timing is not ideal right now because a lot of the areas, like we had an infrastructure in New Jersey that I personally was incredibly proud of, and it was decimated during COVID. So, there's only so many things that trusted servants can focus on at a time. And there is a concern out in the localities that, our primary concern right now is to rebuild our local infrastructure before we start expanding out, that's a challenge too, because there's only, and I loved Roxanne's presentation. Thank you so much. And one of the things I think she said that was super important was that their direction and that they would never go out and say, hey, to the regions, this is what we're going to do, that all of the direction comes from the ground up. And so that may be what we think we're doing, but in a lot of places, it's not being perceived that way. One of the suggestions that my region had that fell flat at your guys' last meeting was that if the primary goal right now is to roll out this website and the national base on that level, then a name is important, like the US Technology Advancement Team or the National Technology Advancement Team or the National Website Team, something that allows people to entrust that that's the goal, that's what we're focusing on, and then we take the next step. It took us 2 years to formalize our PR committee from ad hoc to formal. So what? So what? The work was still done, and it allowed the fellowship time to buy into it. And everybody was like, I don't know, but I got to tell you, nowhere I go, nothing in my state, nothing in my neighboring states have I ever heard anyone not be in support of that effort, because the work was done. We rolled it out incrementally and it worked. So for something like that, a name that relates to the project at hand would build support exponentially where I live. Thanks for letting me share.
I'm sure they appreciate that input. We'll make sure that it goes to them for further discussion as well. We have 2 minutes left. The next person in queue is Lewis.
I'm Lewis, I'm an addict. I just want to just clarify from Nancy, I always hear a lot the timing's not right. How do we know the timing is right? Any thoughts on that?
Why don't you come over here where she can see you?
Oh,
Say hi.
And the microphone's over mine.
Oh God, I planned on spectating, man. Timing with post-pandemic, right? I'm not talking about, oh, it's not a good time for that. I'm just saying is that, if incremental change comes slowly, especially now, it's not because, oh, NA is so dysfunctional, that right now, like I said, we're striving to rebuild NA in New Jersey, because we have areas in New Jersey with no live meetings, like there is a lot of work going on in the ground to reach the communities in spite of our hesitance to jump on board with this. It's not that there's not work getting done.
All right, we've already gone over time, but we have one last person in queue, and then we're going to go ahead and close up. Dennis, do you have somebody on the line?
Sarah? You can unmute.
I think I did. I'm an addict, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi. I want to just say that I appreciate and respect everything that everybody said so far. I think that there's often challenges to change, and as people, not even just as addicts, it's something we struggle with. And I think that if and when we allow ourselves to work through the challenge of embracing change, we can often see amazing things. I know for me, one of the hardest things I ever did was to get and stay clean, and that some of the opposition I hear right now seems to be about the changes that could happen. Some of the greatest values that I've found in the past 2 years have been with having the opportunity to collaborate with people from outside of my area, region, and zone. So I would challenge some of the thought to stay stuck in our old lines of thinking and embrace the opportunities that we may have in sharing information from other areas, regions, and zones, in that I think just like the symbol has taught me, the broader the base, the higher the point of freedom. And I know that I find myself spinning in less circles when I'm able to reach out to my resources. And that this sounds like an opportunity for just that. So thank you, everybody that's done everything today. Thanks for letting me share.
So now that we are out of time, I would like to, let's thank everybody that came in and presented and shared and was involved in the discussion. I would especially like to thank Nancy and Adam, who kind of got put on the spot. And I do apologize for that, but I appreciate your
Don't
involvement.
apologize for me, no way.
And I would encourage both of you to show up. It's an open thing.
And they always do.
Be there, you know, put in your input, and I know you have, and I know you will. So everybody else as well. So let's go ahead and get this meeting closed then. Moment of silence, followed by the third step, right? Many of us have said,
Take my will and my life.
And
my
my recovery, and
shall
so
live.
shall live.
thank you so very much, everyone.